Good afternoon. In this session, we are going to discuss Parajumbles of CAT 2017, Slot 2. There were total of 7 questions. 4 questions were type in the answer, and 3 questions were odd one out. So let us start. Questions number 1 to 4. The directions are that 5 sentences are given. They can be properly sequenced to form a coherent paragraph. You have to decide on the proper order for the sentence and key in a sequence of 5 numbers as your answer. I will give you, for every question, I will give you 2 minutes. Let us start. Question number 1. Oh, time is up. So let us see how we will arrange these 5 sentences. Out of these 5 sentences, the most generalized statement, it cannot be number 1 because number 1, it uses the word hence. When you use hence, that means it is in context to something that you have already stated. Number two looks like a generalized statement because it says the stories we tell reflect the world around us. Makes sense. Number three does not look a generalized statement because it says we cannot help but retell the stories that we value. So he's talking about retelling the stories. And number two was talking about telling stories. So in this context, two is more generalized because first you have to tell the story and then somebody has to retell the story. So as of now, two looks like the most generalized statement. Number four, because it begins with the word and, in all probability, it should not be the first statement because you need a context. You need something before and. And number five says, as soon as we capture a story, the world we were trying to capture has changed. Uh, if I have to make a choice between two and five, two is more generalized because it is talking about stories in general, and number five is talking about a particular story. As soon as you can capture a story, that means a particular story, the world we were trying to capture has changed. So the first statement is going to be two. This starts the discussion. Discussion is that the stories we tell reflect the world around us. Whatever stories will we tell, it reflects the world around us. And as a consequence of this, I think the next statement has to be number five, because number five is actually capturing this essence by saying, as soon as we capture a story, the world we were trying to capture has changed. Now, because the world has changed, what will you have to do? Because stories reflect the world around us, and once you have captured the story, the world has changed. So you will have to now tell the story in some different way. So after that, after number five, you have to go to a retelling of the story, and that is stated in number three. So yes, we cannot help but retell the stories. And why is that? Because stories reflect the world around us. The moment we capture a story, the world has changed, and that is why we have to retell the stories that we value. After all, they are never quite right for us in our time because the time has changed. From three, I think the continuation is in number four. The and in number four is a continuation of what he stated in number three. Even if we manage to get them quite right, they are only right for us. Other people living around us will have different reasons for telling similar stories. So this tells you that whatever story he starts by saying that whatever stories you tell reflects the world around us. Once you get a story, the world has changed, and that is why you have to retell the story. And you may manage to get it quite right. All these are about stories in general. Number one is the last one because it becomes very specific about Indian stories. So, number one is specific about Indian stories. That is why it has to come in the end. So, the order is going to be 2, 5, 3, 4, 1. If you have any questions, please ask. Let's come to question number two. You have 2 minutes. Start. Okay, time's up. So, which is the most generalized statement? Uh, if you only talk about nitrogen, then nitrogen is introduced in statement number four. Okay, nitrogen is introduced in statement number four. Uh, so, however, if you look at statement number five, statement number five talks about lightning. And because of lightning, that the changes happen in nitrogen. Okay. So before you talk about nitrogen, before you introduce nitrogen, I think you need to talk about lightning. And therefore, the first statement has to be number five. Number five should be first statement. There is another reason. If you look at the discussion that is happening in number five, it has no relevance to any other statement. He's talking about one of the most dramatic examples in nature of ill wind that blows goodness. Okay, this has nothing to do with other statements. And I have to, and like I said, whenever you have a statement that that seems slightly odd, that does not talk about other things that you see in other statements, that is very good indication that that should be your first statement. So after number five, after you have introduced lightning, you tell me that it is lightning that starts series of chemical reactions that need to happen to nitrogen, which ultimately helps it to nourish our earth. So lightning is what is required so that chemical reactions that need to happen to nitrogen, they take place. Now, what is nitrogen? Why is it required? We will start. That is introduced in number four. That nitrogen is an essential food for plants. It is an abundant resource with about 22 million tons of it floating over each square mile of earth. Introduces nitrogen. He tells you about other features of nitrogen, which goes to number two, that nitrogen is insoluble, unusable, and is in need of transformation. Why it is in need of transformation? This question is answered in number one. It is in need of transformation because before plants can take life from atmosphere, it has to nitrogen has to be transformed. So order of the statements should be 5, 3, 4, 2, and 1. Is this clear? Anybody has any doubt? Okay, so let us move to question number 3. Anup, your question is 2153. Okay, I told you, Anupam, uh, I told you that you will not be able to fix number 5. You will not be able to place number 5 anywhere else because number 5, if you try to place it like this 42153, you talk about nitrogen. After you have discussed nitrogen, then you are telling me one of the most dramatic examples in nature of ill wind that blows goodness is lightning. And you say that lightning starts the series of chemical reactions that need to happen to nitrogen, ultimately helping it nourish our earth. Okay, will not make sense because you first have to tell me that you first have to introduce that reactions have to happen, and only then it is going to help in nourishing the earth. Now, what are chemical reactions that are going to happen? That is the transformation. Nitrogen has to undergo transformation. Okay, please understand. You cannot reverse the order. You cannot talk about nitrogen first because lightning is what introduces. Lightning is what starts the chemical reactions. Why are these chemical reactions required? These chemical reactions are required because in the aerial form, nitrogen is insoluble, unusable, and is in need of transformation. Before plants can take life from atmosphere, nitrogen has to undergo transformations. That is why this order is not right. Okay, should I move to question number 3? Question number 3, you can start. Okay, let us see. You know that number 1 should not be your first statement. Number 2 introduces the placebo effect. It tells you what a placebo effect is, and it also tells us that placebo effect is when improvements were presented as real. Okay, intervention real, and it used to be regularly dismissed by researchers as a psychological effect. So this is what used to happen to the placebo effect. Number 3 tells us what the placebo effect is based on. Number 4 tells us that our mind is very powerful. It has self-healing capacity. Number 5 says that placebo effects are now studied. Okay, they're now studied. Not just as foils for real interventions, but as a potential portal, the self-healing powers of the body. One thing is certain that 2 and 5 are related because number 2 introduces the placebo effect and tells us that it used to be dismissed by researchers as a psychological effect. The present situation, I think the first statement is number 2. Then you will move to number 5 because number 5 tells you about the present situation. Now, placebo effects are studied not just as foils but also as a potential portal. Placebo effect is a portal into the self healing powers of the body. And how is it a portal into the self healing powers of the body? That is mentioned in number 4. It's mentioned in number 4. It says the mind has the power to trigger biochemical changes because individual believes that a given drug or intervention will be effective. And this could empower chronic patients through the notion of our body's capacity for self healing. So, how is it a portal? That is explained in number 4. After that, he says placebo effect. Placebo effect is not just based on believing in the treatment. In fact, the setting in which the treatments are administered is also paramount. So, the secondary factor that has an impact is the setting. And number 1 talks about the setting in detail. Okay, the setting means you see there are depleted resources. What is the setting? Resources are depleted. Patients rotate in and out of doctor's office. They receive minimal care or concern. This is the setting. So I think 25431 should be the order for question number 3. If there are no queries, I'll move to question number 4. You have 2 minutes. You can start. Okay. After perusal of all the 5 statements, uh, you know that statement 1, statement 2, and statement 5 cannot be your starting points because they are using the short form of the name. The full form is used in number 3. So number 3 can be your starting point or number 4 can be your starting point. So number 3 and 4 we will have to decide which is the starting point. 3 talks about Samuel Johnson, whereas number 4 does not just talk about Samuel Johnson, it talks about what used to happen in the 18th century. In the 18th century, for century English reader, uh, that reader needed a dictionary that had authoritative acts of definition of words of a language that was becoming seeded throughout the first British Empire by a vigorous and practical champion. So there was a vigorous and practical champion. He was the one who provided the dictionary to the 18th century English reader. So number 4 should be the first one because it introduces the person. It introduces Samuel Johnson and says he's the one who provided the dictionary that had definition of words of a language, and he was a vigorous and practical champion. This person's name, after that, I think you have to go to number 3. This person's name is Samuel Johnson, who was a pioneer who raised common sense to heights of genius and a man of robust popular instincts, whose watchwords were clarity, precision, and simplicity. Okay, he wanted clarity, he wanted precision, and he wanted simplicity. Now, after 3, if you look at number 1 tells you that Johnson was very practical, right? And number 5 also tells you a lot of other things, but also tells you that for Johnson, language must have a daily practical use. So 5 tells you that Johnson believed language should be practical, and how he made it practical is mentioned in number 1. So after 3, the next statement is number 5, followed by number 1. Number 5, it tells you that Johnson challenged Bishop Berkeley's solipsist theory. Okay, he challenged solipsist theory. So solipsist theory means the theory that only believes in self, the theory that believes that only thing that matters is self, nothing else exists. So Johnson challenged this theory of non-existence of matter by kicking a large stone and by remarking, I refute it thus. And he's the same guy, he's the same person, he's the same Johnson for whom language must have a daily practical use. Okay, and that is why Johnson treated English very practically as a living language with many different shades of meaning. And he adopted his definitions on the principle of English common law, that is, according to precedent. That is how he did it. Okay, and finally, you finish it by saying that he masked a profound inner torment. That means Johnson, from within, he was tormented and he found solace means relief. He found relief in compiling the of a language that was, in its coarse complexity and comprehensive genius, the precise analog of his character. Okay, so 4, 3, 5, 1, 2 should be the order. If you have any query, if you did not understand anything, please ask. We started with number 4 because number 4 is the most generalized statement. It talks about a vigorous and practical champion, and this champion is Samuel Johnson. Okay, if this is clear, then let us come to the odd one out questions. These were the 4 type in the answer questions. Next 3 are odd one. Instructions for question number 5 and 6. Five sentences related to a topic are given below. Four of them can be put together to form a meaningful and coherent short paragraph. Identify the odd one out. Choose its number as your answer and Key it in. You have to key in the number of that statement which is odd. You are not asked to arrange the remaining statements, but we will try to arrange the remaining statements as well. Question number 5. Start. Okay, let's see which statement is odd. It goes without saying that the first statement, if I have to arrange the remaining four statements, the first statement has to be number 1, because statement number 2, 3, 4, and 5, they all begin with the pronoun we, and this context, we need context to this, and that context is in number 1. So, although we are born with the gift of language, research shows that we are surprisingly unskilled when it comes to communicating with others, right? We are unskilled when it comes to communicating with others. How are we unskilled? How are we unskilled? When we communicate to others, how are we unskilled? I think the next statement is number 5. We are unskilled because we listen poorly without realizing it. And then we often fail to pay attention to the subtle meanings that are conveyed by facial expressions, body gestures, and the tone and cadence of our voice. Cadence is the rise and fall in the pitch of the voice. That is called cadence. We are also unskilled because, number 3, we often choose our words without thought, oblivious of the emotional effects they can have on others. Plus, we talk more than we need to, ignoring the effect we are having on those listening to us. All these things are things that we do. It is number 2 that is the odd statement. Why is it odd? Because number 2 tells you what you must do, what corrective action you need to take. So number 2 talks about the corrective action. It does not tell us what we are doing right now. What is it wrong that we are doing? Okay, is talking about corrective action. that we must carefully orchestrate our speech if we want to achieve our goals and bring our dreams to fruition. So, number two is the odd statement because it does not tell us what exactly we are unskilled. It talks about corrective action that needs to be taken by us. Is this clear for everyone? Question number six. Take 2 minutes and try to solve which one is the odd statement. Okay, question number six. I think the most generalized statement is number two because number two says that Wimbledon's greatest illusion is the sense of timelessness it evokes. Okay, what sense does it evoke? Sense of timelessness, as if time stands still, or something goes on till eternity. This, this is the impression. This is the illusion. This impression is also mentioned in number one. Over the past fortnight, one of its finest champions managed to pull off a similar impression. Which similar impression? This illusion of timelessness. So one of the finest champion, he gave an impression of being timeless. And who is this person? This person is Roger Federer, introduced in number three. At 35 years and 342 days, Roger Federer became the oldest man to win the singles title in the Open era, a full 14 years after he first claimed the title as a scruffy, ponytailed upstart. And then, number five discusses his method. Given that his method isn't reliant on explosive athleticism or muscular ball striking, both are vulnerable to decay. So he does not rely on muscular ball striking and athleticism because your muscles will decay. That is why there is cause to believe that Federer will continue to enchant for a while longer because he does not rely on athleticism or muscular ball striking. So he probably relies on some strategy which he will continue employing even though he may grow old. That is why we will continue. He is going to continue to enchant us for a while longer. 2135 are the statements that can be arranged. It is number 4 that is the odd statement, because number 4 talks about one particular match. Once he had survived the opening week, the second week witnessed the range of a rested Federer's genius. It's talking about one particular series, whereas remaining statements talk about the impression that Roger Federer has left and why he has been able to leave that impression. So for question number 6, answer should be 4. Okay. Before I move to the last question, I have to address Anupam's question in number 5. Number 5, you are saying that statement number 5 is about listening. So that is why it is odd. However, communication is not just talking. Communication is always two-sided. So listening and talking, they both are part of communication. So your logic is wrong. Okay? And like I said, it is number 2 that is the odd one, because it is telling us what corrective action we need to take in order to improve our communication. Remaining statements tell us how we are unskilled in communication, whether it is in the form of talking or listening. Talking and listening both are part of communication. Otherwise, it is not communication. Okay. So we will move to question number 7. Take your 2 minutes and try to tell me which is the odd statement. All right. So the discussion is about the logo. And you start with number 2 by introducing the Commonwealth Bank logo, which is a yellow diamond with a black chunk sliced out in one corner. And this logo is so recognizable that the bank doesn't even use its full name in its advertising. The discussion about the logo, Commonwealth Bank logo, is taken forward in number 5 by saying that, but the Combank logo has more to it than meets the eye, as squirreled away in that diamond is the Southern Cross constellation. Okay, so you can see the Southern Cross constellation that is hidden in that diamond. After that, who does this? Who hides the messages? You will discuss about the graphic designers. The graphic designers, they embed cryptic references. If they are embedding cryptic references, that means not very obvious. They are squirreled away, they are hidden. So it is the graphic designers who hide these messages because it adds a story to the brand. They want people to spend more time with the brand and have that idea that they are an insider if they can understand the hidden message. And it is not just, I think after this you should move to number 3. It is not just logos with hidden shapes. Sometimes brands will have meanings or stories within them that are deliberately vague or lost in time, because the idea is to urge you to delve deeper to solve the riddle. Okay, so he started by discussing the Commonwealth Bank logo, and he tells you that the logo has more than it meets the eye, and this is not, it actually hides something, and you have to understand. This is what graphic designers do in order to add a story to the brand. And it is not just logos, sometimes meanings or stories are also kept vague. And the idea is to allow the customer to delve deeper to solve the riddle. So 2543 is the sequence. Number 1 is the odd one. Why? Because number 1 says those geometric symbols. Question is, which geometric symbols? Which geometric symbols? Because it in number 3 he has told us it is not just logos. It can it can have some meaning or story also hidden. So how can, when he's talking about geometric symbols or aerodynamic swooshes, what geometric symbols or aerodynamic swooshes are we talking about? So number 1 is the odd statement. Please take a look. If there is anything you did not understand, ask. These were the 7 questions of Parajumbles that appeared in CAT 2007 evening slot 2. I hope you liked the session. That's all for today. Take care.